Shall I say that again? Okay, so good afternoon. Before we formally start the meeting, I'll go to each councillor present in turn to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for virtual meetings. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you will be seen by those in attendance and the public watching. So I will begin with cabinet members perhaps if we could try to make it a bit quicker than usual, if you could unmute yourself just before you're due to speak. It is generally in alphabetical order. Councillor Norman, present.
Seeing here.
Councillor Chowns.
Seeing here.
Councillor Crockett.
Seeing here.
Councillor Davis.
Seeing here.
Councillor Harrington.
Seeing here.
Councillor Harvey. I've jumped ahead. Sorry about this. I'm sorry, yes, Councillor Harvey.
Seeing here.
Councillor Tyler.
Seeing here.
Then Cabinet Support members, Councillor Hardwick.
Seeing here.
Councillor Chinman.
Seeing here.
Councillor Selden.
Seeing here.
Councillor Bartlett.
Seeing here.
Group leaders and other representative scrutiny chairs. Councillor James is not with us yet, I don't think. Councillor Lester.
Can see and hear you, thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Seeing here.
Councillor Marsh.
Seeing here.
Councillor Gandy.
Seeing here.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Just barely. I'm sorry, I have a very bad connection today. I'll do my best.
Yes, you sound a little bit cracked up. Any others who wish to declare their presence? No, thank you. So we also have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. Thank you, and I will now formally open the meeting. Just a few introductory comments. I think we must commend the work of our council employees and the Public Health England people on Rook Row Farm. It's been an extraordinarily pressurised time for the last 10 or 15 days, long hours, a lot of dedication. I think the feeling was that things couldn't get more pressing and more demanding, but they have. And hopefully we are through the worst of that particular issue, and it's been great to see the partnership of all sorts of people and organisations working together on that. So thanks to all those people. Secondly, just a reminder that with lockdown being eased, we need to remain vigilant, not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of the whole community. So if people could comply with social distancing rules, wearing masks where appropriate, that will be appreciated by absolutely everybody. Thirdly, there's been a lot of support in the community. I do hope that continues, looking after people who are struggling or having difficulties. And also, of course, as the economy hopefully starts to come out of this time, I'd encourage you all to support local businesses and to buy whatever you can do locally rather than using national suppliers. We need to support our local industries. So I'll now move on. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available via the council's website shortly after the meeting has been concluded. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, In addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders in turn to provide the views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committees. If any attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of Cabinet members remains able to hear and proceedings and be heard. Where Cabinet members are required to vote on an item, I'll ask each Cabinet member in turn to indicate verbally if they are for, against, or abstaining. The results of the roll call will only be recorded in the minutes of the meeting where there is a requirement to record the named vote. If a Cabinet member has not been present for the whole of the discussion on an item due to technical failure, they should not vote on that item. Are there any questions about procedures before we continue? So I will now go to item 1, which is apologies for absence. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk?
I had just had the apologies from the Director of Children and Families leader, and Kerry Morgan is attending in his stead today.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on the agenda today? No, I see no declarations. Thank you. Item 3, no matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer for the minutes of the meeting held on 25th of June. So I will ask Cabinet members in turn to confirm that they agree the minutes. Councillor Chowns.
Agree.
Councillor Crockett.
Agree.
Councillor Davis.
Agree.
Councillor Harrington. Councillor Harrington, your microphone is off.
Agree, sorry. Agree.
Councillor Harvey.
Agreed.
Councillor Norman.
Agreed.
Councillor Tyler.
Agree.
And I agree as well. So that is approved. To receive, item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public continue to have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received 3 questions for this meeting, and the response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary, or to send an audio or video recording, or to join the meeting to ask their questions live. I will now ask the clerk to explain how any supplemental questions are to be received. So the first questioner was Mr. T. Pincham. Do we have a supplemental question?
Yes, we do, Leader. He has submitted a written supplementary, which I'll display now and read on his behalf. Mr. Pincham's question is as follows. I note the Cabinet was originally due to approve the 14.375 million investment for student and/or key worker accommodation, a community room and spectator provision located on Blackfriars Street at Hereford Football Club. However, the Cabinet meeting of 31st of March was obviously cancelled due to COVID-19, so a decision to approve was postponed. All 3 elements of this specific project have the potential to provide significant economic and social value to the city centre. As such, may I ask when the Council will now proceed with a technical design and full planning submission as originally planned for discussion by the Cabinet in March?
Okay, I'm not quite clear which officer the original question, which Cabinet member the original question was addressed to. Was this assets or Councillor Chowns, economy?
It was, sorry, trying to find my unmuting button. The original was addressed to me, so I'll take the supplementary and thank the questioner for their enthusiasm for this project. Clearly, in light of the coronavirus crisis, we do need to review our capital programme. That's work that's going on as we speak. It is clearly of central importance to us, as to the questioner, to ensure that our capital investments deliver maximum economic and social value to the community. And so that is the basis for doing this review. And we will make decisions on specific projects, as soon as possible.
Thank you. So the second question was from Mrs. B. John, and this was directed to the Cabinet Member, Infrastructure and Transport. The response to the original question has been published. Do we have a supplemental question?
Yes, we do, Leader. Again, a written supplementary has been supplied, which I'll read on the lady's behalf. So Mrs. John's supplementary question is as follows. I think it's a very good idea for the Council to challenge the vague and cursory feedback received on the last bid. I understand that it is hard to compare Herefordshire with a large city like Manchester. However, I understand Shropshire Council receives its full allocation. I suggest Herefordshire Council liaises with the transport team in Shropshire Council to see what they submitted and to find out what they can learn from them for the next bid. When will Herefordshire Council publish the more detailed feedback from central government for tranche 1, please?
Councillor Harrington, I think.
Thank you, Leader. I'm having slight issues with my connection. So if you struggle to hear me, I'll switch the video off. If you could just let me know, and I'll do that. Can you hear me okay at the moment?
Yes, fine, Councillor Harrington, yes.
Yes. So in relation to the further question, the minute we have that advice, we'll publish it. We simply haven't had it, and we've been chasing it, which is very, very disappointing. But the minute we have it, we will share it. And we have asked, I think, for about the third time now. In relation to the other points about Shropshire, that's a very interesting one. And I will make sure that we do liaise with Shropshire. And I've also asked that we liaise with other organisations such as Sustrans and cycling organisations to make sure that we get the very, very best advice so we can get the very greatest allocation for second tranche.
Thank you very much. So the third question is for Councillor Member for Commissioning, Procurement and Assets. It relates a little bit to John Curl School project, which we're looking at later on in the meeting. Does Ms. Jameson have a supplemental question?
No, I've not received any supplementary questions for this one, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we move then on to the questions from councillors. I think we have, I'm just getting that on my page. The first one of those from Councillor Paul Simons, which relates to the SIL issues. Do you have a supplementary question for me, Councillor Simons?
Councillor Simons has submitted a written supplemental, Leader. So again, I'll read that for you. So Councillor Simons' follow-up question is as follows. I take it then that in the 12 months since this council requested Cabinet to bring forward proposals for adopting community infrastructure levy, no work has been done to make this happen. Can the Leader therefore advise why this request has been ignored or provide evidence of any work undertaken? Whilst flooding and coronavirus have been huge challenges, there were at least 6 months prior to these in which work could have been done to update previous draft proposals for members' consideration. Whilst there were floods last year too, of course, I don't imagine that led to the immediate disbandment of the strategic planning team. A cynical person might think that the intention is to delay any decision until Herefordshire Council ensures it has captured all the income from planned major developments through Section 106, rendering adoption of SIL an academic exercise of little actual financial benefit to town and parish councils.
My belief, Councillor Simons, is that this is genuine delay. We have had exceptional circumstances. We are very open to either having a SIL or retaining the current arrangement. We have no preconceived idea about which it should be. So the process does need to be gone through correctly. And there is a timetable now in the question and the answer which is being given, and that will be followed through. So the next question is from Councillor Nigel Shaw. Is there again a supplemental question?
Yes, there is, Leader. Councillor Shaw is not able to join us, but he has supplied the text of his supplementary question. So Councillor Shaw's supplementary question is as follows. Thank you for your answer. I am concerned that the Council does not have an accurate grasp on the finances of its new purchase. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss the economics of the centre further with officers. I would also welcome an opportunity to speak with the new centre manager, who I understand has been in place only since March. To attempt to make a commercial success of this acquisition will likely need an investment of several £1 million. I hope that the administration recognise that and I look forward to seeing a costed business plan being published soon. Prior to this quarter, rent arrears stood at over £250,000 and service charge arrears at over £60,000, the main debt being from the immediate previous quarter. Has the new managing agent been given instructions to minimise the landlord's shortfalls through a business rates minimisation programme and by vigorously chasing rent and service charge debts?
Okay, Councillor Davis, I think this one is yours.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Shaw, for your second supplementary question. I'll get a written response back to you on that one because there's a couple of things within it and I'd rather make sure it's accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we then move on to item 6, which is the allocation of Pothole and Challenge Fund 2020-2021 grant for highway maintenance and reallocation of capital programme budgets for priority flood works. And the purpose of this is to approve the allocation of funds to enable priority flood damage repairs and also to enable works to enhance the resilience of the county's infrastructure. This item begins on page 23 of the agenda pack. I think I'll pass over straight away to Councillor Harrington.
Chairman, can I just declare an interest on this one before you start? I did have my hand raised for declarations of interest, but I just want to make it clear for clarity that I'm a resident of Fownhope, that the road opening will have no greater effect on me than the rest of my ward. And I'm sure that Fownhope Road will come up in the discussion following the report. So just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. Thank you for that. Have I missed any others? No, thank you. The clerk, it says 4 people have entered the waiting room. I don't know whether they need to be allowed in. Okay, so we move on. So Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Leader. And can I say, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
And if I do drop out, will you just stop me so that I can move on to video, without video, I should say. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, members, committee members, members of the public. The allocation of the Pothole and Challenge Fund, the reallocation of capital programme budgets for priority flood works. So this essentially boils down to an issue of how we fund for emergency works that have been inflicted upon the county. We had historic floods in February. We had floods, significant flood events the year before, the same winter. It had a severe impact on our infrastructure and on our revenue, and to some extent on our capital budgets. We have been left with a bill for the capital repair work to our infrastructure, our network, particularly road network, of around about £10 million. At the moment, we can't meet that without considering all the implications and all the possible avenues in which we can meet that. We have spoken to central government repeatedly, to Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, to DfT. We have spoken through both our MPs to ask them to require, or to certainly to ask central government to pay for this extraordinary damage to our network. These are extraordinary events. These are not resilience issues that occur every few years, as one of the MPs, one of the ministers said in one of his replies to us. These are extraordinary events. We are, as authorities, and we have been as authorities, stripped of the kind of security in revenue and capital that we had prior to 2010. We know that from a revenue point of view, we are around about £90 million a year, after you adjust it for inflation, worse off. In terms of capital, the situation is not entirely better, although it is marginally better. We haven't been stripped of as much capital. So we have a situation now where we have a Pothole and Challenge Fund award of around about £7 million, which was announced. The detail was announced after the flooding, but the budget announcement and the pre-budget announcements were prior to the flooding, which allocated a certain amount of money for us to try and catch up with some of our backlog. We're around about £100 million behind in restoring our network to a satisfactory condition. This is a result of historic degradation, in a sense, over the last 10 years. What's happened now is that the government has said to us they will not give us extra money for the rebuilding of the roads, in particular the two sites at Fownhope and Whitney-on-Wye, but all the other areas, including reinforcing Home Lacey, which is not sufficiently protected to survive another flooding event. They are saying they won't give us any more money. They'll give us a certain amount through Belwyn, but they are saying that outside of Belwyn, they will not intercede and give us as an authority the money that we need to do the job. So we are in a position of having been given Pothole and Challenge Fund money, which is to try and catch up with all the backlogs that we face as an authority. Every parish councillor, every ward councillor knows there is constant demand for capital money to resurface roads, to restore good drainage, to generally improve the public realm in our communities. We were given this money, allocated it originally to do this. What the government is now saying to us is, use that money, which we've allocated to you and to other authorities proportionally who haven't suffered flooding, use that to pay for your flooding. Now, we think that's extremely unfair, and we think that as a result of it being so unfair, and as a result of the consequences that may come from that, in other words, us not being able to do the works planned, to return network into the condition that we feel it should be, to carry on with some of the capital projects in other arenas that we might want to do in terms of school improvements or any other aspect, we feel that this consequence of us not being fairly funded for the damage to our network is something that we really need to bring to the full council. It's a time for us to be quite grown up about the way that we deal with funding and local government funding. We cannot continue in the way that we have been funded in the last decade. We cannot continue as authorities to perform our statutory duties, let alone further improvements to the communities and the lives of the people who live in those communities without decent funding. So what we're proposing today is that the allocation of the Pothole and Challenge Fund is used for its original purpose and is put into the Highway Maintenance Capital Programme budgets. And then what we propose is, secondly, we call an extraordinary meeting of the council where we review the entire capital programme budget and we make a decision about where we get the money to pay for the priority flood repairs. We will leave some of the repairs that we can leave and hope that we get funding at a certain point, but some of those repairs are priority repairs and must be expedited as quickly as possible. And there are statutory responsibilities that we have. We can't shirk them. We wouldn't want to shirk them. We know already the effect that the road closures have had on the communities of Foundhope and the surrounds. It is exceptionally upsetting to me that we have had a road closed for such a long time and a community, in a sense, stranded for such a long time. So we need to make sure the funding is in place. We need to identify the best way to do that, and we need to do this all as quickly as possible. The recommendations are before you. I'm sure there'll be much debate on this. I think we might as well just get into the debate. There's officers on hand to assist us, and we hopefully will come to a resolution.
Right. So does anybody want to, any of the Cabinet want to kick off to start with? Any thoughts? Councillor Harrington, we've got various options. There's number E, isn't there? That's quite important. And I don't know whether you want to take it. Do you want to take it line by recommendation by recommendation, or have a general discussion about the whole package? I think probably general discussion. We'll go for that. Under E, it gives. It has various options. I wonder whether we could discuss the merits or demerits of those. I mean, the first option seems to be to take the money out of the capital programme. That there is an ability to borrow money. We've got a bit of a ceiling for that. We could do that, and in many ways that looks like a fairly easy route, just to borrow a bit more money. Is that what we actually want to do as a cabinet? Do we want to recommend that to the council? That's one option. Another one is to actually look at the various projects in the list, which is in option 2, and work out which of those we might perhaps want to cut some money from. The third option that in there is actually to go for the taking some money out of the Pothole fund, which obviously reduces the amount of money which can be spent on potholes. So I know we can cut and paste, we can do a whole combination of any of those. So Councillor Harrington, again, do you want to just comment on any of that?
Yes, Leader, I will. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for laying out the options which were before us on the page. I think the view that I've taken is that this discussion can be had in the room at full council. I mean, that is the point of laying out the options now. The question is, do we provide a steer to council? Well, I think, perhaps we can, but in some ways that's making a decision for them. And the whole purpose of calling an extraordinary meeting is to be collegiate with our councillors and our fellow members and say that these are the discussions that we have to have. And that's why I haven't sought to necessarily segregate any of those options for recommendation, but I'm happy to hear the views of the Cabinet.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of points of clarification first before I comment. So we've got this paper before us because the funding that we were assured by our MP, Mr. Wiggin, was available and available for doing these flood repairs, and that we should stop whinging and just get on with it, actually hasn't come to fruition. So although we had to effectively undertake almost a similar amount of repairs in the autumn of last year, a lot of which we had to cover with our own funds, we're now being told by the government minister that we should be using funds which every other local authority is being granted to maintain their existing road network, effectively to undertake a second round of repairs that were caused when the first round of flood repairs were flushed away some 3 months afterwards. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Harvey, that's a fairly accurate assessment, which I might add to. It is unfortunate that one of our MPs made statements in the public domain that funding was available and that he had personally intervened with the Minister, Robert Jenrick, and had assurances that the repairs at Foundhope in particular would be paid for. That doesn't appear to be the case, and we've sought clarification, and there is no records provided to us that was ever the case. We obviously wait to be further enlightened by our MPs. We have asked both MPs to discuss this as a matter of urgency, and we're assured they have. I know that although Foundhope is not in his realm, I know that Jesse Norman has made very strong representations on our behalf for funding for the county in general, and particular ones in his ward like Whitney on Wye. It's also further unfortunate that Mr. Wigan has made comments conflating the purchase of Maylords to the capital works required to repair the roads at Foundhope. There is no correlation whatsoever. If we're borrowing money to invest in an asset that is making money and providing us with surety, which is exactly the reason we find ourselves in this position as an underfunded authority, cut to the bone, that is not helpful in the public domain. It would be, I would very much request that Mr. Wigan concentrates his efforts on speaking to the ministers involved and really explaining to them the dire situation that we face as an authority with our funding, and the dire situation that the community of Foundhope face if we're unable to progress with the works.
Yes, I know, Councillor Harrington, you mentioned that it was unfortunate that Mr. Wigan made these promises, but actually I was delighted when he made the promises, because I thought that's great. That's what he's doing his job for us to help get the money. What's unfortunate is that he hasn't been able to deliver on those promises. Councillor Harvey, did you have another point you wanted to make?
Yes, Leader, I've got several. I started off just seeking some clarification on what the position as it stands, in order then to go on and make a few points from the perspective of my Cabinet portfolio responsibility for finance. It's looking from the recommendations that we have here that there are two kind of groups of recommendations. One is to do with whether we recommend to go ahead and use the money that we have been provided with by central government to repair our existing road network and maintain it for that very purpose, and that we place a line in our capital programme to actually commit to undertaking those repairs, which will benefit the road network for the whole county. I mean, we have inherited from the previous administration's 10 plus years in office what our public realm partner refers to as a network in managed decline. I don't think there's any member of the public out there who would disagree that they see only decline at the moment in the condition of the road network as taken as a whole, although there may be sections of it which are in relatively good or good condition. From my point of view, I'm very much of the opinion that on behalf of the entire county, we should be spending the funding that we get from central government just the same as every other local authority does, to assist us with maintaining the existing road network. What we have should be spent on doing exactly that. So in terms of the recommendations associated with creating a line in the capital programme where that government grant funding is placed, and then us proceeding to plan a programme of maintenance work which seeks to use that money to maintain and improve the network we already have, I'm fully supportive of those recommendations in the report before us. The difficulty that we have is that we have a community which is effectively cut off as a consequence of some very serious subsidence and damage to the road from the February floods, which we are statutorily obliged to put right. And at the moment, the prospect is dwindling that there will be any funding coming from central government as a consequence of Mr. Wiggins' best efforts to provide that funding to do those repairs. So the other group of recommendations that we have before us is really looking at the options that we have to do something about that. Where are we going to get the money from to undertake that work? So it sort of boils down to, do we borrow the money? Do we rob another line in our capital programme, which council approved as part of our budget back in February, so less than 6 months ago? Or do we do a little bit of both? When I presented the budget to full council back in February, I made it clear at the time that we had not, in putting forward a 4-year medium-term financial strategy aligned to what would be what was our corporate plan, which we renamed the county plan. We hadn't exhausted our capacity to borrow money because we wanted to have available to us the flexibility to undertake new projects in the future. When I look at the projects that we have planned, the exciting range of projects that we have planned in order to deliver our county plan in a sustainable and environmentally responsible manner, recognising both community and economy as being hugely important dimensions of the overall well-being of our county, I really struggle to see where I would point to remove funds from that programme in order to throw them into a hole in the ground. As you say, the investment that was made recently in securing back into public ownership the entire freehold of the Maylords Orchard complex, which more than covers its cost and delivers a profit, and will continue to do so for the public purse, on top of all the community and social benefits that will come from the way in which we can manage and develop that site. That's a very positive investment. That's cash positive for us, and is aligned with the kind of things we're wanting to achieve. Throwing the money into the ground for the second time, after we'd been given the assurances that we had, is a real struggle for me. However, I feel hugely for the community of Fownhope and for everybody who has been massively inconvenienced with the closure of these sections of road, not just around Fownhope, but Whitley-on-Wye and other places where, you know, we're having to drag our feet in terms of actually getting the work done for want of having clarity on where the money's coming from. loath though I am to do it, my preference is to use some of the scope that we have to borrow further in order to cover the costs of doing this work, whilst hoping, however slight that hope may be, that there is a change of heart from central government in terms of giving us the support that, you know, really is their responsibility, given the exceptional circumstances that we and other local authorities encountering the flooding in over the winter had to experience and deal with on the ground. So I would prefer, as a cabinet, that we took to full council a recommendation of a preferred course of action in terms of the options presented to us, if for no other reason than that the whole council supported the capital programme less than 6 months ago that we put before it. So we already have the backing of full council for that range of projects. And I, loath as I am to borrow money, I would rather that we did that as at least our starting point, than that we compromise, delay, diminish, or indeed cancel any of the projects that we put before council such a short time ago. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think Councillor Chowns is next.
Thanks. Yeah, we're talking here essentially about where to find £4 million to repair very urgent damage, to do works to repair, urgent works to repair damage that was due to these unprecedented floods, the worst ever since records began, you know, really extraordinary situation. And I think, you know, the response of central government has been really deeply disappointing. They have not recognised just what an extraordinary set of circumstances this is. They have not recognised the urgency that we have had needing to get funding in place so that we can do these works which have to be done. And that's left us in an incredibly difficult position where we have to say, well, you know, our options are either cancelling other programmes or borrowing more, you know, because central government has let us down. And fundamentally, our MP has let us down. You know, he promised that the money would be forthcoming from government to deal with the flood damage, and it isn't there. We have been really badly let down by our MP and by central government. And so from my perspective, the only course open to us is to borrow. We are going to have to, that is the only option, because we can't, you know, cancel another capital project in order to repair this road. We will have to borrow. And that will be the fault of central government and our MP for not actually delivering the funding that they promised in these extraordinary, once in a several hundred years floods. Thanks.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. The other option is, of course, to use the money that's come from the government, the 7 million or so. And I just need to make it clear that in the letters which I've had from the ministers, they have said that if we decide that that's what we should use the money for, then we can use it for that. They're open, but that's our decision. They aren't saying you have to do it. They're just giving us a pot. Everybody else is using it for potholes. And they're avoiding their responsibility to provide us with extra money, because it ought to be an extra pot which they give to us. They should have given us 7 + 4, and instead of offering us the 4 million, they're saying, well, you can, if you want to, you can use it from the 7, which everybody else is using in different ways. Councillor Chance, you.
Exactly. You know, that's not a generous offer from government. That's just saying, you know, steal from what we've actually given you the money, given everybody the money for, to put it into this other thing that we really ought to be funding separately. That is the message that needs to go back really clearly.
Yes, but that's an option.
We need to spend it. We've got plenty of potholes.
Just so everybody knows that's a possibility, which is why it's set out as one of the options in the paper. Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a very good report. Thank you, Councillor Harrington, for specifically putting out the details of the problems we have got facing us as a council. You know, if we don't find this money in the options for the immediate repair works to the road. We don't know whether in autumn or January we might have the same situation we were in February. We may have more flooding, severe flooding, and the works that have already been done could be undone by something that we haven't gone forward to deliver these proposed works. I'm in agreement with Councillor Harvey and Chowns that we would have to borrow the money. Our capital programme is really important for us as a cabinet to deliver our programmes we want to do from February, and it's just important we make a decision today to move this forward and get our roads and our infrastructure in a good repair, so we can invite our visitors to our economy and enjoy our tourism. If our roads continue like they are, we are not going to be getting that. And I fully support what Councillor Harrington has put forward today.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington.
It was just to respond briefly and broadly to Councillor Harvey and to Councillor Chowns. I mean, you know, we have been put in an extraordinarily difficult position, I feel, and it's a completely unfair position. And in relation to the letters that we've had back, Leader, from MCHLG and DFT, you know, that's very generous of them, but you know, that wasn't the original purpose of the money, and it is disingenuous for them to kind of rewrite it at the last minute to suggest that that's what it's used for. We are desperately behind in our capital programs. As I said, we only have to go into a village in Hereford to see a drain that should have been repaired, to see a capital improvement that should have been made in terms of resurfacing. If we are to spend that money on Foundhope, and we are not going to let Foundhope down, let's get that clear. We will match this one way or another. We have already proceeded along those lines, but we need to identify, you know, the correct route going forward. And it is a very difficult question, and I think, you know, we have this choice of refining the options. My personal view is that you know, I would suggest that all options went forward to council, but I appreciate that the cabinet view is different on that.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Well, let's just turn to the agenda papers and the appendices to the report to actually just look at the four options. Option one is to extend our borrowing, and the table there gives an indication of what that would look like. So the cost of repaying the additional borrowing of just over £4 million would be that would be about £90,000 a year from future revenue for an extended period of time for out of our revenue budget. So that's 90,000 year after year that we wouldn't have to spend on other things. Option two is to reallocate the just over 4 million from existing projects. And when you look at the table, which contains the existing projects, and you recognise that we've got to find 4 million from that somewhere. When you look at the sums of money involved, we're really faced with taking money from elements of the capital programme which are already intending to try and turn around the situation of managed decline that we have inherited in terms of our existing road network. So you can see investment in C and U class roads was a budget amendment that was championed by members of the opposition back in February, where there's £2 million sat there. You know, should we strike that out? Should we strike out the 2 million that is looking to invest further in other aspects of our infrastructure? Should we be taking the 4 million out of the Highways Asset Management Programme, which is basically the core programme, the core annual programme to invest in the entirety of the county's roads? Or the improvements to the Hereford city centre, which, you know, is so desperately needed and strongly supported by business across the city. So those are the lines where you can go to get the kind of sums of money that we're talking about here under the existing projects. If you scroll on and have a look at what the the projects are that are looking to the future. The investment that we're proposing to make in public transport and electric vehicles for cities and market towns. Should we take the money from there? And what about bringing forward employment land and incubation space in our market towns? We could reduce that amount of money by a third. Where else we could go? Well, we could strike out making an investment in the in Ross and its economic development. You know, that would find the money at a pen stroke. But I don't think there's any member of the cabinet who'd be supporting doing that. Ross has been waiting for investment in jobs and its local economy, and it's perfectly positioned at the end of the M50 and direct connections to South Wales. We should be making that investment, in my view. Moving on to option 3, it's back to taking money that would be going on addressing the pothole problem in the county and using that instead. And option 4 is, you know, pick and mix from any or all of the above. That is, I find none of those options satisfactory, but the least worst of them is borrowing the funds so that we don't hinder ourselves in being able to make the sorely needed progress in the kind of game-changing visionary investments that come with turning Herefordshire into a 21st century exemplar of rural living. I'm really excited by the plans that we've got to do that. And I don't want to see our market towns, our rural communities who rely on an improved road network, communities who are waiting and hoping for improved public transport provision, to have their hopes dashed as a consequence. If we can support over a long period of time the kind of repayments that would be needed for doing the borrowing, I think we should. And you know, I do feel that we have a responsibility as a cabinet to express a preference here. You know, we have the job, we're in the seats. I'm very happy for opposition councillors, for group leaders, for scrutiny to disagree and to suggest that we do something else. But, you know, from my point of view, this is the least worst option. And I think as a cabinet, we have a responsibility to express our preference and then recognise that, you know, there are other voices to be heard and open it up for council to accept our recommendation or to propose something different.
Okay, I see no more hands raised at the moment. So I think we'll move on to find the views of group leaders. If we may, we can then debate whatever views come out from those group leaders. So I think, if I may, I'll start with Councillor Hardwick, as he's already declared an interest in his ward. I don't think there's any question about the money being spent and the road being reinstated as quickly as is possible.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'll listen with interest in Councillor Harvey's comments with regards to further borrowing. And to be quite frank with you, I think that, as far as our group concerned, would be the better option. I would be very loath to take monies away from any highway maintenance or any other projects in the capital programme. And so I think, without anything further to say at this juncture, I would be very supportive of that route.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I've been listening to the debate with interest. We, as our group, we understand the logic of setting out the proposals, as you have done from A to G. I would obviously proposals A, D, and E will get debated at full council, and you know, I wouldn't want to preempt what the discussion would be, but I think that's the thing that we would expect to see is the cabinet making a proposal to take to full council. So I'm in agreement with Councillor Harvey on that one. I think that the administration, the cabinet should bring forward whatever they decide. And I realise that there are good reasons for supporting different views of different options of the four. Just one point of clarification, Councillor Harrington. I think you said that the extra 7 million was announced before the flooding. In actual fact, I looked at Mr. Hall, and I think the extra 7.6 million was announced on the 14th of May, which was after the flooding. I just seek clarification on that point.
Yes, and I'm sorry if it. I'm sorry if that. I tried to make that distinction. So we were made aware of the challenge fund money before the flooding. When the government got round to announcing it formally, they had added the caveat that it could also be used for flooding. But yes, the original preparation work, the debate behind it, the prior knowledge within local government was made before that, Councillor Lester. But you are quite right. When the decision was formally announced to the public, it was made after that date.
Yeah. And I think it's right to have that proposal in there, which is recommendation G, which is there's always the possibility of gaining further funding for roads. And I think this issue is not going to go away. I think that, you know, measures like the announcement from government for extra funding is really beginning to acknowledge that after all of the requirements for making savings over the years, you know, to keep those key services running, issues like road maintenance have been backing up, as it were, because some of these assets last for 20 years and eventually they come to the end of their life. I mean, Mr. Hall's the expert in telling us all how long these assets last for, but you will always, over time, no matter whether they're in an era of austerity or whether you're in an era of road building, assets will come to the end of their life, and it is then incumbent upon the sitting authority to deal with it as and when these problems arise. But we note all of the proposals that are put forward. Just on a personal level, I would have thought it was good for the cabinet to come out with a decision with regard to the options involved, and we certainly look forward to the debate in a full council meeting. Thank you.
Right. You're not prepared to disclose your hand at this stage, then, Councillor Lester. And this isn't, I suppose this isn't supposed to be a debate, is it? This is just you're making comments, so perhaps I'll just leave that out there.
Sorry, are you asking me a question?
Well, kind of, but I'm not supposed to ask questions, I don't think. It doesn't kind of work like that, does it? Having given you the right to ask questions, maybe I'm asking for that, but I'll move on. Councillor Marsh, I'm doing this in alphabetical order.
Lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to Clive Hall and his team for making this appallingly complicated issue, you know, vaguely understandable to the layperson. I was particularly struck by the 5.2 billion that is being made available for flood defences nationally, and I do hope that will give our MPs yet another chance to put our case very strongly, so that, as everyone has said, this very difficult and unfair decision won't need to be made in Herefordshire if that can be arranged. I was quite heartened at paragraphs 26 and 28, which we haven't particularly heard about, maybe because that will be at full council, to hear that there may be some contributions of 1 million at paragraph 26. And also would like to congratulate whoever was in charge of doing the completed hillside scheme with a saving of 2.5 million. That seems a considerable achievement that is worthy of praise. And yes, certainly in Leominster, roads are, you know, the absolutely most likely thing that people tell me about on a very regular basis. Thank you.
So now, Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, these issues have to be dealt with, Leader. But bear in mind, wherever this money comes from, it's the money of hard-earned taxpayers. So can the Cabinet member assure me that when the money does come forward, from whatever means, it will be rigidly monitored and delivered within budget and on time? Because with capital expenditure in the past, that's not always been the case. Can you assure me of that? And also, can you assure me that roadside landowners should be held responsible for the upkeep of water courses under their control? Because a large number of the problems of highway flooding is caused by their neglect. Perhaps he could look at some policies to ensure that they carry out that work, or if not, notices served on them and the council does it, and and they are billed for it. We've got to bear in mind, Leader, that money over the next few years is going to be extremely tight. I don't think we'll get a flood of it from government, from whatever you say. So we've got to put our own house in order and be very, very careful how we go ahead. And as far as any recommendations are concerned, I would rather have a discussion with the director and look into this matter a little bit further before I give you any other opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Harrington, do you want to respond to Councillor Matthews' first observations, or wait till the end?
I'm happy to address them now. I mean, Councillor Matthews, I can give him my assurance that I will do my utmost to make sure that we follow the best process and that best value for money is achieved for the taxpayer. You're quite right in what you say. And further, in relation to riparian rights, which is an issue that you've touched upon in your further comment, I mean, that is an important issue, and it ties in partly to the lack of resource that we've had as an authority to go around and deal with some of those issues. So I take your points, as always, strongly on board.
Okay, thank you. And now Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just a couple of points. First one, that the managed decline cannot be allowed to continue as it has, because it has reached the point now where managed decline is making roads almost impassable in some places, and the damage to vehicles over the winter months as well. The public really are fed up with the managed decline. The other point that was made to me is that the delays in coming to this decision, Leader. I understand that the central government has not actually said no to providing any money, extra money yet, and that inconsistency messages coming from various departments of central government is not helping us. So we have to make a decision, and I think the full council meeting, probably in early August, would be the best way of doing it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Okay, so we might want to respond to a little bit. I suppose the question in a way is, do we as a cabinet want to make a recommendation, or do we want to stick with the current proposal that Councillor Harrington's put on, which leaves it then to a debate of council? Councillor Harvey.
If I may, Leader, just to respond to a couple of points that were raised by comments from group leaders. Councillor Lester, these road assets didn't come to the end of their lives; they were washed away. They were taken young, and we're having to restore them. So it's not as if this is some sort of failure to properly provide for, next generation road, this is a road being snuffed out in its prime. And Councillor Matthews, from my perspective as the Cabinet member responsible for finance, I can say that we're putting a huge amount of effort into ensuring that the failures of the past, which you yourself have been a strong champion for in terms of identifying and bringing to public's attention as regards failures to deliver to time and to budget, are very much in the past. And we are bringing into place very rigorous project management and investing in project management professionals to ensure that our projects are taken forward in a timely manner. And as regards value for money, we're making sure that the contracts that we let are properly tendered for and can demonstrate value for money, not only to the assurance of ourselves, our councillors and council as a whole, but also to the satisfaction of our auditors.
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Lister.
Sorry, I think Councillor Harvey's misunderstood what I said. So if she did, I'll make myself even more clear. My comments were relating to the whole road network, not specifically to the roads that got washed away. So I was talking about the life of roads in general, not about the affected roads.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have come in earlier, but apologies. Just to say that I would fully recommend us going with the option of going for borrowing, and that gets put to full council. I think it's right that we do show leadership on this, and then that can be debated in the room.
Does anybody, any other Cabinet members want to express a view on that before I ask Councillor Harrington to comment? I think Councillor Matthews does have his hand up, but I think the time for questions has finished. Councillor Matthews.
I was merely going to say, Leader, to thank the Cabinet members for their assurances. Thank you.
Of course, borrowing money, we can only borrow it once, and once we've taken this money, borrowed it, we can't. It's not available again for another project, so we kind of lose some flexibility going forward. It's an ongoing cost, £95,000 a year or whatever. That's still money that's got to be found every year. So borrowing is not an easy thing, and as Councillor Matthews has said, these are difficult times. And here, by putting the money into borrowing, we are making the situation in a way a little bit worse for ourselves from an income perspective. It's just delaying the pain. So I just point those points out that as we as Cabinet may decide that's the best of a bad bunch, really. But I don't want people just to think that borrowing money, it's nice and easy. It's not easy. It's none of these decisions is easy to make. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I agree with you, Leader. This is not an easy option. It is just the least worst option presented to us. I mean, one of the points that maybe I didn't make clearly enough in terms of the investment programme that we have already put before council and had approved less than 6 months ago is about accelerating change and delivering new ways of working, of moving, of living in Herefordshire, generating new income streams, and also accelerating the rate at which we can reduce the ballooning costs that we're facing in other areas of the council's operation and create new income streams for us for the future. So yes, borrowing is not an easy option. We do have to recognise that we have to be able to continue to service that debt. But if we delay making the changes that we need to and the investments that we need to generate wealth for this county and enable this council to continue to deliver services by creating new ways of working, then, you know, we are only sitting in an ever diminishing pool. And we can't, time is too short. We can't afford to delay on making some of these improvements and investments. So that's another reason why I say that the borrowing option, unpalatable as it is, at least does not mortgage our future, although in a sense it is.
Okay, yes. Unless I hear from anybody else, Councillor Harrington, do you want to propose an amendment to the recommendation, or do you want to stick with the options to go to council in August?
Leader, having listened to the cabinet and had the debate and listened to even the views of opposition members, I am prepared to amend that to say that we as a council recommend the borrowing as the primary route. As Councillor Lester and others have pointed out, we're obviously going to have a further debate in the room at a council meeting, and there may be changes to that if the argument is strong enough and carried on the day. So I'm happy to have that amended, but I'll rely on someone else to redraft that.
Okay, so perhaps I could ask the monitoring officer what her recommendation is for how we move this forward. If you're next to me, I'd be asking you questions. So could you
Leader.
explain how we must deal with this? Thank you.
So Councillor Harrington has made a proposal. You now need to ask for a seconder. This is on recommendation E.
Sorry, I missed that a little bit.
So you're now, because you have a proposal to amend recommendation E, you're looking for a seconder to that proposal.
And Councillor Harvey has seconded.
So now, Leader, I'd ask that you take a vote on that amended recommendation E. I'll just get the paperwork in front of me. So recommendation E would then be Cabinet recommends to Council that the priority flood repair works totalling 4.027 million as set out in paragraph 24 of this report are funded through the use of extended borrowing. That's option 1.
Okay. So we have a proposer and seconder. All those in favour of that proposal, if you'd like to stick your hands up.
Aye.
Or we say aye as well. So is there anybody on the Cabinet who is against that proposal? Okay, so thank you very much.
I then ask, Leader, that you take on block recommendations A to G, less E.
Thank you. So I'd like to take on block recommendations A to G, did you say? A to G with the proposed amendment to F. All those in favour? E, wasn't it? Yes. All those in favour?
So the proposed point of order. Sorry, Chairman. Sorry, Leader. The point is recommendation E, was it not? Not F.
I'm sorry, you're right. Yes. So it's A to G with the amendment agreed to E.
Leader, can I ask for a roll call? Sorry on that.
Yes, fine. Will you do that or shall I do that? I'll do it. If I can get hold of the. Well, in favour, first of all, how do you vote, Councillor Davis?
For.
Councillor Crockett?
For.
Councillor Chowns?
For.
Councillor Norman?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Councillor Tyler?
For.
Councillor Harrington?
For.
And myself, for. Thank you. The monitoring officer, can I carry on now to the next item on the agenda?
Yes,
we've been going for an hour and a quarter. There was a suggestion we might have a break at this stage, or we can carry on. I think we probably might do the rest maybe in 3/4 of an hour. I think that if we can try to do that, if some of the items go on, we might stop, but otherwise I think we'll carry on unless anybody on the Cabinet is unhappy with that. So the next item is better ways of working, revised implementation. This is quite interesting, I think, because the recommendation was only made recently to adapt, to do things differently. And in the space of a few weeks or months, we're now at a totally different situation, and we're looking at something quite new. So it's a real impact of what's happening, COVID. It's an impact which is going to have a long-term effect. So this is a new proposal. It's rationalising some of the buildings. It's acknowledging that people prefer to be working from home. We have to be careful about people's mental health with these changes. And of course, it may be in a few years' time, things will change back. But I think we have to make this opportunity. So I'm not sure who is proposing this. Is this Councillor Harvey?
Mine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's mine. I'll keep it brief. Obviously, we're all in the middle of this at the moment, working differently. So this is a revised implementation. So we have had to completely change our ways of working and our original plans in light of really good success by staff, and listening to what staff are saying that they would like to work from home more often. I think you just have to look at the within the paper to see that 85% of people wanted to work permanently from home, at least part-time, and it was a 53% return rate. And I don't know if any of you, well, a number of you have been in local government for a while, you'll know that that's a huge return on a survey. So I think that really does gauge the feel. Some of the comments that I've had back from staff is that it's allowing them to have a work-life balance, which completely turns things on its head, because you think, well, if I'm working from home, how could I have a work-life balance? But it's allowing them to be able to spend quality time with their children, with their partners, etc. And here in the debate just before here, we're going to be facing some really difficult financial decisions over the next year. And one of the things that I think it's really important to do is look at our property portfolio and see what savings we can make from the buildings before we even start looking at any type of service. And I know that that is shared by all of Cabinet. So Natalia is here to answer any questions. If you want to briefly outline the report, or we can take it as read if you want to get through it quicker.
Natalia, do you want to mention any particular key features?
Not particularly. I mean, the report's here. I'm happy to take questions, and obviously Councillor Davies has done an introduction. The only thing I'd mention is in terms of the timeliness of this report. We probably would have brought it in September with the asset management plan, but if we want to relinquish the lease or Algar House, that has to be in August. Otherwise, we miss that break clause, and it would be another 2 years to be on that site. And I think, as Councillor Davies outlined, our direction of travel is to withdraw from some of those quite big, expensive buildings.
And I forgot to add that I want to propose an amendment to one of the recommendations. It's only a small thing, but it would mean an awful lot to show our commitment to working with market towns. That in F, it says, recommendation F, reconfiguration improvement works at the Ryfield Centre up to the value of £500,000 in consultation with the Cabinet member for commissioning, procurement and assets. And I would like to add, and Ross-on-Wye Town Council to that, please.
Okay. So Natalia, this is a change. That there are a minority of people who still want to be in meetings, who still want action with other people, and they're are they being forced into a new work environment? That's the sort of first question. And the second is that it's invaluable to people to have physical contact. To my mind, I think for mental health and for everything else, they need it some of the time. So how does this proposal enable meetings to take place and encourage people still to meet? Because I think people do need to be encouraged to meet in some way.
Yes, and we've certainly found from some of the services who sometimes have to deal with difficult situations that they do need the support of others. and also like a secondary bit of advice, particularly around things like social care, but also could include some shared experience on things like planning applications and stuff like that. So I suppose that's why we're not completely going and getting rid of all our buildings, and we're looking at Plough Lane being a hub for services and for people to meet. So at the moment, because of COVID and the social distancing, we've got about 200 desks. If that social distancing reduces, then we can easily make available 400 desks, and then we can always go back to what we originally had, which was more like 500. And what we're looking to do is have those teams in place who definitely need that contact, but also have a rotation where teams can come in maybe one day during the week, so they do have that contact. That is definitely some feedback that we've had, that people would still like some contact with the office as well. Mm-hmm. On top of that, what we want to do, as you'll see from the report, is boost up our MAOs. So already in plan is an increase in the number of desk spaces within Leominster, and part of the recommendation is the Ryefield Centre to increase our desk capacity there quite significantly. So we can try to kill two birds with one stone in terms of making spaces available, but keeping them in our market towns and keeping them close to where people live, so it reduces the travel.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Natalia, for the report. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see that, you know, we are bringing this forward earlier than expected, to be able to take advantage of relinquishing the lease on a building that doesn't seem to be serving our needs any longer. And I'd really like to say well done and thank you to the staff for all the very many ways in which they've not only responded flexibly to the crisis that we've all been presented with, but for their ongoing and continued very positive and helpful feedback on how they are experiencing this change, and the recent staff surveys that have been undertaken, which we're doing to make sure that we understand how our staff are feeling whilst working in this, you know, disconnected and new way. It are really very, very positive. I was extremely heartened at my cabinet member briefing this week to get some feedback on the kind of responses that we received to the latest survey. Not only did we have a very, very positive response, but the speed with which staff responded to the opportunity to comment, and the number of staff responding was outstanding. There was no need to chase or cajole people. They were very quick to respond and were telling us, you know, that this is making a very positive difference to them. And from what we can see, it's not having in any way a detrimental effect on the functioning and the operation of our council and services. Clearly, we have to be very mindful of this as being early days in a new way of having to do business, and over time we may find that there are unexpected or unintended consequences. And one of the reasons for carrying out these surveys and staying so closely in touch with people, not only in terms of their work health, but they're also their mental health, is to try and understand early and anticipate some of these potential new problems. But I'm very positive about this, and if it means that we can get accommodation that better fits with a council working in the 21st century, improves the work and home life balance of our staff, and the quality of the services that we're able to provide to the community, whilst strengthening our presence more broadly across the communities that we serve in Herefordshire. I really don't see a downside to this. I think it's fantastic, and well done to Councillor Davis and the whole, team that's been involved with, sort of working through the detail of this. I think it's brilliant.
And I just wanted to just come back on something that was said about keeping in contact that you talked about, Leader. You said about people really want interaction, and I just thought I'd share how brilliant staff are with coming up with their own solutions. Yesterday, I know one specific team had a team meeting in the back garden of the manager's house where they went through all of their work and then had a tea party. So actually, there really is, it's about having a different way of interacting. It doesn't need to be in an office. And I thought that was brilliant, just thinking we need to see each other every now and again, but this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to make sure that it's in a really nice thing. You wouldn't get that in an office. So I thought it was quite a nice story.
Yeah. Councillor Crockett, then Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Harvey's really taken the words out of my mouth. But in summary, really, yes, put your hand over your mouth. In summary, really, I think this allows more personal and business flexibility, and it also will help our finances when we're renting buildings that are not necessarily fit for purpose or fully utilised. Just a point on the figures for the survey. I just wondered if Natalia had any thoughts on, does she think that homeworking was a consequence of having a good result? Because if you're homeworking and you've got better time management, perhaps then you do fit in a bit of time to complete a survey.
Yes, I'm sure the timing was really important, because I remember when this survey came out from HR, I immediately went on it and completed it. And I don't know if it was because it was a particular time of the day or whatever, but also it is a subject that people are really, really interested in. Anytime we do anything about staff accommodation, people are very interested because it's very important to them. It's their work environment. And I think, as pointed out, we had a very good response in terms of that. So people are very interested in where we go, but completely acknowledge there will be challenges for some people, including reasonable adjustments that we will need to take consideration of.
But that's exactly what we want. We want more people to be engaged with decisions. So excellent, thank you.
And I'll take one from Councillor Norman, and then we'll move on.
Right, thank you. Well, to some extent, my points have been raised. I think this has huge potential. It's obviously a far better way of working if we can get it right and if we can manage it properly. And we've mentioned things like teams wanting to get together, needing to get together, and we can enable that. And I think we also just need to be absolutely sure that people working at home are working, not spending too long in front of the screen, sitting properly, all those sort of things which we need to remind people about. Councillors too, actually, let's remember, I think we've all been through the process of being zoomed out and feeling absolutely, just had enough of this. So I think we need to make sure that along with the new way of working, we are also, pacing ourselves, being sensible and ensuring that we look after our own health and well-being in this new way of working. But overall, I think it's got great possibilities, and I welcome it.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. I think I'll go to group leaders now, starting off with Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair. I would just say that, we already have a very flexible workforce. And so these recommendations are just catching up with the fact that we've got extra buildings that we don't need to utilise anymore. So this is just keeping up with our very agile workforce. What I would just say is that with these improvements and alterations, just ensure, I'm not saying that we're not, but just to ensure that our staff have got the equipment, both the technology and the other physical equipment that they need to be flexible and just get that organisation right on the key spaces that we will still be using, because obviously physical buildings will always be required, not relied on as much as perhaps they used to be, but just to make sure that there's organisation there so that people don't drive all the way into certain places just to find that that meeting room is booked out to somebody else. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Excuse me, Leader, got a bit of a throat. I can't help thinking that this has all been rushed and driven by the coronavirus and expiring leases. I would like to see this issue left for a few more months to see how the working from home worked out. Because back a few years ago, Leader, you won't remember, but we were driven out our wonderful headquarters at Brockington, and we were told by chief officers, and probably Natalia, that the only way we can have an efficient and constructive and properly supervised council is to have all staff under one roof. And that all senior officers were just down the corridor from different departments, and therefore they could easily contact each other. What's changed that thought? I know that this is a way forward, and you're probably right long term, but I genuinely think it's all been rushed because of the leases that are about to be expired and also the coronavirus. I would rather have seen the working from home carry on for a few more months to make sure that everything was operating all right. So we've a little bit, we've certainly got concerns about the way it's been handled at the moment. And I'd like Natalia to comment, if she'd be kind enough, about the reason of a move from Brockington to Plough Lane. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Matthews, I wasn't involved in that decision, so I don't feel quite qualified to comment. In terms of being rushed, I think because we'd already done a lot of work around Be Well, that the report that we took in February put a lot already in train, and we were very much prepared for flexible working. Fortunately for us, especially compared to other authorities, so we had already started rolling out the programme which enabled people to have laptops, individuals have laptops, flexible working approaches. So in terms of the ethos, that hasn't changed. What's changed is we've got a pandemic, which has meant that some of those things our practices have had to escalate. So the working from home and our adapting to that has had to be quicker. But as I think as some of the other members have said, the workforce have adapted really, really well to that. And generally, not 100%, but generally our IT has been able to cope with that as well. So I think over the last few months, we've proved it's possible. However, we have given ourselves some wriggle room to give us at least another couple of months to see how it pans out and how the numbers pan out. So even though we still can, Elgar House can go, we have still, as you'll see from the recommendation of the report, still have Nelson House, though as it's panning out at the moment, again, we can give up that lease as well. But we're giving ourselves some wriggle room to be able to test that.
Councillor Davis, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just to say that I appreciate that you've got those concerns, but I think what COVID has allowed us to do, and this is across every single business in across the world, is be able to do the unthinkable, try the things that you hadn't tried before. So whole teams would have said before, there's no way that I can work from home. And actually it's forced them into a position where they say, actually, we can work from home and we can do it a different way. And I think so when you say a rush, actually COVID has been probably the impetus to people going, actually, we can do things differently. And remember, it's that really high percentage of staff that want to do this. So I'm always going to be caring about staff because of my union background, but it's staff that are saying that they want it, and I think that that's really important to listen to them.
If I could come back briefly, Leader, that's fine. And I say long term, if you'd given a bit more time, I could go with it, but I've got a few concerns at the moment. But you've got to bear in mind, it's essential that staff are always available to members. And sadly, that's not been the case over recent months. Thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much. Yes, I echo the leader's point of the importance of face-to-face meetings from time to time. And also one of the lovely things about Plough Lane Cafe was just the way that the happenstance of bumping into people. So you'd see different teams having an informal way of getting a different view. And I hope that, you know, won't be lost altogether. But I want to draw attention to paragraph 26 about equalities, and to say that I really feel that this better way of working is a real opportunity, that I'm so glad that everyone is positive who we already employ, but I feel it should make us a better employer for those who are disabled, or those who live further away, or those who have limited access to transport, or those who have caring responsibilities, because we have shown that people can work without it necessarily being 9 to 5. People can be trusted to fit their work around their other responsibilities. So I do feel that there will be many positives, as well, of course, as the reduced time and carbon impacts of quite a lot of working from home. And I certainly welcome the increase in the multi-agency offices and the assurance about the reasonable adjustments, which are important. And as Councillor Norman says, acknowledging that 8 hours a day on Zoom is probably at least 6 hours too long.
Thank you. Councillor Selden.
Yeah, at the risk of being zoomed out, Leader, I welcome the report. The group welcomes the report. Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, good report. I just sort of warn on the percentages side with regards to the actual response from workers. It was only 52%, and we had 83% supportive of working at home. So in my view, that's less than 50% of the staff that were actually positive. So I think we need to keep a close eye on productivity. I hear what's being said about face-to-face discussions and sort of casual bumping into each other in plough lane. I think that's important. And there's certain officers that I've spoken to in different departments that feel there's an advantage sometimes when the team are working in the same room, because they can bounce things off each other far easier. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Obviously, the positive side is that if we can lose some of the buildings that are probably less than efficient and very costly to the council, that's a good move. So I think it's just those comments that I want to make. Thank you.
Okay, if I can just take up Councillor Matthews, a couple of his points. One about it being done perhaps too quickly. I think the work pattern is going to change. And we do hear this coronavirus thing is going to stay around for probably at least another 12 months, maybe forever. So I think we need to acknowledge it's not just a short-term thing. This is a longer term. We are going to be, as he's mentioned earlier, we're going to have financial pressures going forward, and we do need to start delivering some of them as quickly as we can. Yes, that's linked with the lease. We want to be saving that money as soon as we possibly can. So I think we do, it's a balance with all these things, isn't it? More consultation means the decision takes a lot longer. Less consultation, you can make it more quicker. And we're just in that balancing area. So I think I'll close the discussion on this item and make the recommendation, which is set out in the papers. It's letters A to F, with E amended to refer to consultation with Ross as well. Can I put that recommendation to minutes? All those in favour, just say aye. Or maybe you have to unmute or something.
Or
all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Monitoring officer, is that okay? That item?
I'll let you.
You'll let us off that one. Good, thank you. So the next item.
Chairman, on a point of order.
Sorry, Leader. Point
I'm
of
not
order.
asking, but I've got to leave. I've just had a phone call and I've got to leave urgently. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Thank you.
Point of order, Leader.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Are we not supposed to do roll call votes for everything?
Monitoring Officer Claire.
Legally,
we are what we need is a system where it's very clear how the vote has been taken. I could see, because I've got everyone on the screen here, I could see how everyone had been taken. So that's why I said I'm happy on that occasion that there was nothing that could be misinterpreted.
I'll do it by name next. Do you want to do it by name now to get it right? Yes, go on. I'll do that. So, okay, those in favour, Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Crockett.
4.
Councillor Chowns.
4.
Councillor Norman.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Tyler.
4.
Councillor Harrington.
4.
And me, I'm in favour too. Okay. Thank you. So,
Can I make a suggestion, Leader? Point of order.
yeah,
We could use the voting buttons in the participants panel for cabinet meetings.
no,
I'm more obvious.
No,
I don't think
I don't
we're
think
allowed.
we're allowed to.
The current position is that we can, as long as it is via, if we can rely on it, basically, and we haven't tested it yet. So I am working on moving towards an electronic voting system, but for this meeting, we're not ready to do that, I'm afraid.
right, moving on to the next item, Heritage Action Zone. This is a proposal to accept some money from the government, which we have to match. It's been going on for some time, I think. It'd be good to see this money being spent in Leominster. Who is its Cabinet Member of Environment? So Ellie, Councillor Chowns, this is your paper.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leader. And I'm glad to see that Roger Allenby has joined us from the team as well. I'm really delighted to introduce this exciting project, which is a great example of collaborative working between one of our vital market towns and Herefordshire Council. Just to briefly introduce the project, Heritage Action Zones is a nationwide initiative led by Historic England. Its goal is to kind of unlock the economic potential of historic high streets, and Leominster was one of 69 towns selected to get a share of the £95 million fund. Leominster's been awarded £1.8 million. Herefordshire Council has also agreed £1.8 million of match funding, and the project will attract £1 million of private sector investment. And it covers the designated Heritage Action Zone in Leominster. It's the main conservation area, and it's got over 200 heritage assets, which is fantastic. As I mentioned, this has been a real collaboration between the council, Herefordshire Council, and Leominster Town Council. And the Town Council did a brilliant job engaging extensively with the wider community, and project ideas coming out of this formed the basis of the original expression of interest in the delivery plan. And, I really hope we can build on this model kind of going forward with the market towns. We had last night, as many of you will know, a meeting to kick off development of economic development investment plans with the market towns. So more collaborative working all round, I hope, is coming forward. This particular Heritage Action Zone programme, it's got 8 projects, and the 3 main ones include 2 renovation grant schemes and public realm improvements as well, including resurfacing, pedestrian improvements and so forth. And the programme, if we approve it today, will commence immediately, and it ends in March 2024. And there'll be a Heritage Action Zone officer who's appointed to manage it on the day-to-day basis, supported by the rest of the economic development team. We're going to work really closely with Historic England to ensure that any adaptations to Leominster's heritage take into account challenges of climate change, and we're going to aim to ensure the improvements in energy efficiency and so forth in the buildings as we take this forward, and work closely also with the ecology team to ensure that there's protection and enhancement of the natural environment as part of any restoration works. And I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that this is the first decision to come to Cabinet with the new report format, which includes a section explicitly on climate and ecological impacts. I'm very pleased that this has been agreed, and every decision going forward will come forward in this format. So that's excellent. I'd just like to make finally 2 minor verbal amendments in paras 48 and 49. Both of those should start with the words "we will." They are relating to ensure that Heritage Action Zone funded works improve the overall energy efficiency rating of funded buildings, and consider and minimise the environmental impacts of materials used in Action Zone works. So they should just say we will. That's all from me, and I'm very happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Roger is also.
Okay, Councillor Norman.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess I should be declaring an interest as both a resident, a town councillor and a ward member. But I, as you'd expect, welcome this enormously. I'm really glad that we're finally on the way. As Councillor Chowns has said, it's been a really good community effort here, all sorts of input from the wider community. Really recommend the town council, and particularly Councillor Jenny Bartlett, I may say, who's done a great deal to lead on this. But also to say that I hope this is going to go some way to allay the real concern there's been at what seemed to be constant delays and then uncertainty about when the money was coming forward and whether there would be time to actually fulfill the things that we want to do. So I suppose my question is on that, because I think we understood that this would have to be done by the same date. I can't remember when it is now, March is it, as was originally proposed. And yet the delay in actually getting started seemed to be, you know, endless. So it's wonderful to have it happen. And I know Leinster is thrilled to bits about it. Lots of brilliant ideas, but just perhaps a bit of reassurance on that one. Thank you.
Okay, I've just got one comment question. So there's 1.8 million comes from Hereford Council, 1.8 million from the centre, and there's a reference to private match funding of £1 million. Is that match funding actually a fixed amount? Because I know that I've looked at some of the papers that properties that are renovated, there's an amount which is paid by presumably the property owner, and that percentage varies from property to property. So is the million, do you get to the million and then people don't have to contribute anymore, or is the million a very much a variable feast? It could be a lot more. I'm just thinking in a way the economic value that's being generated by spending 1.8 million of our money, and the more individuals put into the projects themselves, then the more value it actually is generating.
Yes, indeed, and I'm going to ask Roger to contribute in just a second on those. But I did just want to build on the comments that Councillor Norman made and really pay tribute to the work of the councillors. I know we've got some Leinster councillors in the room now who've been really involved in this, like Jenny Bartlett. So, you know, really pay tribute to the work that they've done bringing this forward. Roger, could you pick up the points, please, about timing and about the private sector match funding?
I will, thank you. Well, I'll take the one on match funding, and if you don't mind, I'll pass the one to Nadine on the timing, who's also joined us. And Nadine has been instrumental in developing the business case and securing the funding, working very closely with town council colleagues who've also been critical to securing the funds. In terms of the match funding, there's a proportionate contribution from each grant that a business would make. They apply for a proportion from us and put a proportion of their own funding in. The £1 million is a conservative estimate based on the number of grants that we would put out, the value of money that we've identified for grants, and the amount of money that businesses would pay. So it doesn't switch off at £1 million. It's based on the amount of grant money we would put in at an intervention rate, and is likely to exceed that number. There is obviously some concern as to whether businesses might be investing given COVID and the current climate, and that's something, as we start to deliver the project, we will need to monitor. However, the other grant funds that we run, not the COVID grant funds, but other grant funds like March's Business Investment Grant or things like the Heritage Enterprise Zone, have actually had a sustained level of interest, and the March's Business Improvement Grant has had one of the busiest periods that we've had since we've been delivering that grant scheme. So it does show that businesses are looking to invest in their recovery and redevelopment. Nadine, would you mind taking the timing question, please?
Yes, of course. Just to say, yes, unfortunately, we do have to condense the programme into the remaining time frame, which is March 24. We have the opportunity to reprofile the funding due to the delays at the beginning of August. But I think if we do get agreement today, I'm confident that we can deliver the programmes in year one, which was the Wi-Fi, appointment of the HAS officer, and also to begin to develop the Heritage app. And we can then reprofile the renovation grant schemes into years 2 and 3, which will give us time to start the publicity.
Okay, and a fairly obvious question as well. We're going to insist that a lot of this is local labour that's used on these projects. Will that be written into the terms somewhere?
We can certainly, promote that through the scheme as we develop the paperwork and the guidance.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington had a question.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Childs said and what Councillor Norman said. I want to pay tribute to the Town Council and the Ward Councillors of Leominster who've done such hard work, in a sense, off their own bat on this. And I'm very pleased that there's a public realm element of this, and we'll, endeavour to do our best to get the work and the restoration, in a sense that the jewel that is my local town in the Crown deserves, but without any favouritism.
Right, well, I'll go to group leaders now, starting off with Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Yes, so I also need to declare I'm a Leominster councillor, and delighted that this is going to go ahead after what seemed a bit of a long and tricky period. Just like to confirm that businesses are investing in Leominster. I've been in touch with quite a few talking about the temporary traffic regulation orders, and I've been touched by the amount of time and effort and money that people are putting in. So I'm encouraged about that. And also just like to say that I really do welcome the new section of the report. I think that's going to be an excellent addition and will really keep us focused on all reports in looking at the ecological and climate outturns. So welcome to that.
Thank you. So Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. I must say that here in Bromyard, we're all insanely jealous of what's happened in Leominster, but pay tribute to all members of the council that have put so much work in. And I hope that some of the local businesses will come some of Bromyard businesses' way. And well done, everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just to commend the report, basically, and the work that's been done. Very supportive. Very good for Leominster and good for the county of Herefordshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, good for Leominster is what I would say, and I know my group would say we're very pleased for Leominster, and it's great that they're going to benefit from these initiatives. What I would just say though is that my group want me to pass on the fact that we would really welcome a review of how well this project does go for Leominster, because there are the other market towns that are equally as important, and we would like to see further initiatives and investment to all our market towns, because they're extremely important, and a third of our population lives in them, and a greater part of the population relies on their services. So I think we owe it to all the market towns to see what can be done. And so it would be very interesting to see how well this works in Leominster, so that we could possibly find new ways to get funding for other market towns to do similar projects. Thank you. Thank
you, Councillor Lester. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Picking up Councillor Lester's point, I'm very pleased that as an administration we are making provision to invest in the market towns in a way that it has never been done in recent memory. So if you and your group are supportive of that, then I'm very pleased to hear it. Well done to the town council in Leominster for championing this, and I hope that other town councils can find similar projects that we can work with together on. In Ledbury, we benefited hugely from a lot of support from the County Council and the Heritage Lottery Fund in the major restoration work that went on the Master's House, but that was we were just lucky to have that in our town. It wasn't really something that the town council was very deeply involved with, and I'm really pleased to see that this is a piece of work that we can actually jointly fund between, you know, putting the effort in at town council level and the county council being able to provide matched funding. And this and other projects hopefully will help us bring more funding into the county and will help to cement a much more deep and lasting relationship of cooperation and support between the parish councils in Herefordshire and the county council. And you know, I hope this is the first of many.
Councillor Chowns.
Thanks. I'd also just like to welcome the commitment of the Conservative group to evaluation of the impact of economic development investments, as Roger Allenby will tell you all. I keep on asking him about this actually, the data on previous projects. And coming from a professional sector where every project has a budget line for evaluation, I am, you know, deeply personally committed to this. So I'm glad that we've got agreement across the piece that evaluating the impact of our investments is very important, and I assure him that I'll be keeping an eye on this going forward.
Great. Well, I think I'll put it to the vote again. So the recommendations are set out in the paper. There are no amendments to that. So if I can put the recommendations A to E on block, all those in favour or against? In favour, Councillor Davis? No, I'm not doing the right thing.
No, you're doing the roll call, remember?
I'm doing.
I'm for.
You're for. Okay. Okay, so that's and then Councillor Crockett.
For.
Councillor Chowns.
For.
Councillor Norman.
For.
Councillor Harvey. We didn't hear you.
There you go. For.
Councillor Harrington.
For.
I think that's everyone. I'm for as well.
No, you missed me, Chair.
Right.
Missed me, Councillor Tyler.
Oh, thank you.
For.
And yes, you were off my screen. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, so all in favour. So that's passed. That is very exciting. Fantastic. Good. So we then move on to the multi-agency protocol for children and young people with disabilities and complex needs. So this is children and families. So is this for you, Felicity, or is it Pauline, or both of you?
Thank you, Leader. Am I on? Yes, I am. Good. Well, the title of this more or less says it all: Multi-Agency Protocol for Children and Young People with Disabilities and Complex Needs, Preparing for Adulthood. And as that says, this is really about enabling that transition to be as smooth and as well planned as possible. And it's, as we've heard, for young people rather, with special educational disabilities, and complex needs. And I don't want to go into a great deal of detail on this. Kerry may want to add a little bit more, but I think the main point here is that we want to ensure that young people have maximum choice over their futures, that they are able to access higher education, training, employment, things of that sort. Independent living, so important that young people are able to be as independent as they possibly can, and that they're able to participate as fully as possible in society and contribute within their local community. So I'll perhaps leave it to Alexia to elaborate a bit more on that, but this is very welcome and hope you're able to support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Norman. I wasn't going to go through the report. As Councillor Norman said, we're asking this afternoon for you to agree to the revised protocol to ensure that young people have the best preparation and support for preparing for adulthood. So actually I'm open to any questions from anybody who'd like to ask.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I just really do welcome this. It's a real step for me towards us looking at families differently and young people moving into adulthood. I wanted to just give really good feedback, because I always bang on about the equality impact assessment not being right. And I want to say how well you've done on the report. So I just wanted to commend how much you've put in that report about how we're going to work with disabled young people and how they're going to be part of the decision making process. So I just wanted to commend you on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, fully support this report. It highlights the importance of the transition period between children's services and adults and communities, and the smoother that process is, the better. So yes, lots of good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I was just really wanting to understand the degree to which what we have in here is tightly meshing with the strengths-based approaches in adults at the moment, and that all of the work and the handover stuff is happening hand in glove. I'm sure it is, but this is a public meeting, and I'd just like to make sure that we've asked the question and got the answer. So we're giving everybody confidence that we are absolutely joined up on this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to mention that. And yes, we work very, very closely with our colleagues in adults. The protocol has been worked jointly with our colleagues. There is some still work going on as well behind the scenes. It's not a document that's like we tick off and put on the shelf. It's meant to be a dynamic document that we update, and we will review it annually as well. We are still working behind the scenes on ways of working, on decision-making processes. There's a piece of work that's going on at the moment with adults and with children to make sure that we are making sure that our processes and our strength-based assessments are all lined up, that we are actually making that as smooth as possible for young people. So yes, it is. As I said, there's lots of other work going on behind this document.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Okay, any other comments before I go to group leaders? Thank you. So I start this time with Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's important to recognise the importance of this work, and it's a relatively new area that we've gone into over the last few years, and I thoroughly welcome it and look forward to seeing the results. So I'm really glad to hear that it's a dynamic document. So one thing that young people don't do is stay still.
Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, fully supportive of this move. Very important. The transition is as smooth as possible. So, yeah, our group fully welcome it.
Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Yes, as a protocol, we think it's a really important document. We welcome it, and it's not going to affect many children in the county, but it affects a significant number, and we need to get that protocol right. So that document has to be spot on. One of the points I would make, if you do look at the document, the way it's drafted, there are quite a few typos, and one example would be that there are sentences without full stops, there are sentences with full stops, so there's inconsistency there. Those are minor little things, but if you go to page 9 of the policy, there's under decision making, the sentence starts presumed to have capacity. Young people aged 16 or over have capacity. I think that wording with respect could be better worded, because the sentence tends to hang there, and I don't think it starts off in the best way it could. With page 11, where it's talking about resource panels, the the two sentences there are saying what should happen. I would expect that in a protocol, it's saying what's going to happen. So I think that needs rewording there, and with the same point really is with quality and on monitoring. That's what you're saying should happen, but that's not really explaining what the protocol is going to set out. And so with those suggested amendments, as I say, we accept that this is a really key document, and we look forward to seeing how it will be used to our young people who really need this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Yes, no, we support the document. It's very sad that at 17 that the employment rate is so very low, and one of the things that we will focus on is connectivity skills for this group so that they have the best possible chance of both gaining work and not being isolated.
Thank you. I don't know whether either of the scrutiny chairs wish to comment on this. Yes, Councillor Gandy.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to say I think it's a really good protocol. Just a couple of observations, really. I think Councillor Marsh has touched on it. I mean, employment, training and further education for this group of young people is always a challenge. And going forward, as a result of COVID, it's going to be a challenge for all young people in Herefordshire. So I think, you know, this is something that we've really got to put our mind to. But one of the things that I think is an opportunity, if there are any opportunities to come out of COVID, is what you were talking about earlier, which is different ways of working. And so therefore, you know, some young people who may perhaps suffer with autism or have a physical disability, which makes it very difficult for them to either work in a crowded office or work in a building where there isn't a lift and it's you know, the job is on a first floor or something. There now may be opportunities for people, children with special educational needs, to actually get jobs where previously they couldn't, because they will be able to perhaps do that job from home. And I think there are opportunities here that perhaps weren't available to us before, which is perhaps a small light at the end of the tunnel of what's been a very bad pandemic. The other thing I would just like to comment on is the fact that one of the things that is in the protocol is about the fact of how important it is that this group of young people have access both from leisure and socially with peer groups. And that's obviously something that is very difficult at the moment and may be very difficult for the foreseeable future. And I'd be really interested to know what we are going to do, bearing in mind that this situation could go on for 12 months or more, what we are going to do to ensure that this group do not get so badly damaged through not being able to socially meet as a group. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so I put the recommendations to the Cabinet. All those in favour, Councillor Davis?
4.
Councillor Crockett?
4.
Councillor Chowns?
4.
Councillor Norman?
4.
Councillor Harvey?
4.
Councillor Harrington?
4.
And Councillor Tyler?
4.
And I'm 4 as well. So that recommendation will be taken forward. Thank you very much. The last item is John Curl High School.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, so this is another weird one. So actually it covers both my portfolio because it's an asset, but also Councillor Norman. So Councillor Norman's been involved with it from the beginning as well. Really excited by this, not least because showing how Cabinet can work well together. Councillor Chang's proposing environmental factors for the build that have been accepted, and it's just worked really well, the whole project on this. So hopefully after we get the okay from today, I've told the head to be watching this if he wants to find out straight away, but otherwise we'll email him right after, because I think he's about ready to, I think he's got his own spade ready at the moment, Kerry, isn't he? Just about to start it himself.
Probably.
So I genuinely want to put on record how tenacious he has been in getting the best for his school on this, and I really do applaud him and everybody there, governors, for what they're doing. So I'll let Kerry quickly go through it, but any questions, feel free. Should be relatively easy, I hope.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Very quickly, by way of context, folks, this is money that's been granted to the local authority from the Department for Education to accommodate growth in pupil numbers at certain schools. It's relatively simple in Ross-on-Wye because this is about growth in the secondary phase for John Curl, and there is only the one school, secondary school in Ross-on-Wye. So there wasn't a decision as to which school we expanded to be made. And the plan is that the school grows by 30 students in each year group over the next few years. So a further 30 students will go to the school in September 2021, and then a further 30 making 60, 2022, and so on. The good news about this, I think, is that it's a slightly unusual, it's not unique, but a slightly unusual method of doing it because of the urgency of the need for this school expansion now. We've actually agreed with if it's approved, we've agreed with the school that they will manage the build. They've done this before in similar sort of size projects, in fact, twice before, and done it successfully. There's an approved contractor in place now who's a local contractor, well, localish, Shrewsbury area, a contractor who's worked with the school before. The money is not taken from other pots. It's money that has to be spent on this, and there's a reputational risk if the authority doesn't actually spend it, because the local authority has been given the money only for this purpose. We wouldn't be granting the funding to the school. What we would be doing is paying the invoices as they came in, and the school, because they're managing the project for us, run the risk of overspend. We don't. The risk sits with the school. We're confident they can do that well. Like Councillor Davis says, the head teacher's particularly tenacious about managing this stuff. He's very good at it. So we think it's straightforward. There's one slight change. This is subject to planning permission. I was asked a question at the previous meeting about whether planning permission was in place, and I said I thought it was, but I'd have to check. It is not in place, is the answer. There was planning permission, and there has been in the past for different projects on this site. But we've gone to the planning advice people. We've gone for pre-planning advice now, and Darwin, the contractors, if it's approved, have already factored into their timeline the time it would take to get planning permission. So we don't envisage any difficulties there because they've done this stuff before, and it's actually a teaching block that we're building here. So if it doesn't happen in time for September 2021, because it's obviously very tight now, the school can accommodate that for a term or so by redeploying other teaching blocks around the school. But that doesn't take away the fact that it is fairly urgent now, I think, for the need is there. Thank you. Thanks, folks. Thank you.
Do I have any questions? Yes, Councillor Chowns.
Thanks, and thank you, Gemma, for your introduction. And I do, I want to echo what you said and acknowledge and appreciate the responsiveness of colleagues, both in the Cabinet and officers, to the concerns that I raised when this first came to my attention a few weeks ago regarding the environmental impact of the building. I think it's really good to have the clear acknowledgement from all of us that we agree it's vital that all buildings funded by the council are built to the highest possible standards as per our climate and ecological goals clearly stated. And, especially considering this is a science block in a secondary school, right? So it seems highly appropriate. Personally, I really hope that we can and will aim to do everything possible to achieve passive house standard in terms of energy efficiency, plus, additional elements that are in BREEAM. I acknowledge that the wording in this decision report is not quite as tight as it, it'll absolutely ensure that. But what I think is very important is that there is now kind of real clear acknowledgement that future building projects must integrate these concerns right from the start. That will be built in, and I'm really glad we now have that assurance. So thank you to all the team for that, and I really look forward to seeing a bit of a difference in the sorts of buildings that we're looking at commissioning going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really, thank you for your report, and welcoming the fact that this will really improve John Curl and help for the secondary education for the pupils coming forward. Thank you for clearing the matter up about planning, the planning permission. Yes, that should go through smoothly, and in terms with the contractors you have on site with yourselves. And no, I think it'd be fantastic to see a unique building with a BREEAM deliverable on it in our sustainable matters as we go forward. So it's really exciting. I look forward to seeing it finished.
Thank you.
Okay, Kerry, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot now. I mean, it's great that this money has come from central government. It's fantastic. Yeah, there have been some announcements recently, haven't there, about school funding from central government. Have you any indication of whether, or, you know, what we can do in Herefordshire for possibilities of projects from that money?
That is putting me on the spot. That's different from this proposal, I think, Leader, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, totally different. Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I've read the proposals. That the reason it's putting me on the spot is because there's some ambiguity as to whether it's new funding or not. Really, there is additional funding, but then there was a pay award announced for teachers as well. So what I'm not clear about yet, and I don't think anybody is really, is whether the money is available for capital spends in this way. Some of it perhaps will be, I think, but the proportion that could go to capital or developing buildings and sites compared to the proportion that will go in funding a pay increase is a little bit opaque at the moment.
Okay, sorry, I did put you on the spot there.
Sorry about that.
There was another question, was it Councillor Norman?
Thank you. Not entirely surprised about the ambiguity, but hopefully that'll be clarified before too long. Anyway, just really to reinforce points that have been made. It's a tremendous project. I would pay tribute to the head, who is so enthusiastic and who is so keen to get on with it, and taking a great deal of this onto his own shoulders in effect. So I hope we can all get behind him and support what is a really it is needed, badly needed, and hope we can get on with it. And thank you to others, including Councillor Chowns, who've helped us to tighten up our requirements, and very important that is too. And I hope there can be some learning out of that. I do think all these things we're doing them for all sorts of reasons, environmental and all the rest, but there are wide benefits from this. Hopefully the school as well, in terms of possibly cheaper to run and things of that kind, but there's lots of learning for the children, the young people, from these sort of things. So I hope we can actually incorporate that and make the most of it. So hope we're getting your support. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions. So I'll ask the group leaders for any comments. First of all, Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, fully supportive of this. Very important for Ross-on-Wye, especially with the increase in houses that's currently going on in that area. The school really does need this extra provision, so our group are very supportive. Thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Yes, no, I'm supportive, and I'm particularly glad that we're going for a very high environmental spec, because yes, emissions from schools and academies are a very large percentage of our remaining Herefordshire Council carbon emissions. So it's really important to be showing this very clear lead.
Councillor Lester.
Thank you. We really support this development, and it's really great to see resources going to a really good school. So yes, we're really in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, fully supportive. Yes, let's get it built.
Okay, so I'll put this recommendation to you all. All those in favour, Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Crockett.
4.
Councillor Chowns.
4.
Councillor Norman.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Harrington.
4.
And Councillor Tyler.
4.
And I'm also 4. Okay, so that's the last item on the agenda. See if I can. So I just close the meeting. Monitoring officer, is that all I need to do?
We just need to have confirmed that the live stream has stopped recording.
So is the live